Welcome back to Open Studio. Okay. Okay. So we're at the point where I can finish this handlebar, but I really kind of want to get the headlight done. I've started the outside, the bezel of the headlight, the frame, the housing of the headlight. I could finish it and then do the headlight, but what I really need to do is start by blocking in the gray that's in this headlight around the edge, because the way that it works is the outside edge is going to, excuse me, is going to cover that gray. So if I do all the detail on the outside of the headlight, the housing, and then I do the gray of the inside, there's a good chance that I'll get some overspray and it'll, turn all that really dark rusty color kind of grayish. So I'm going to start by putting in some of the gray in the headlight, and then I can finish the outside of the headlight. I think that's going to be the way to go. So while I'm getting things prepared, again, I just want to thank you all for sticking with us. It's nice to have the mic on, not to screw that up, and it's also nice to number these correctly. So I know episode 40 or 31 seems to be missing. 34, I can't even get the numbers right. Episode 34 was mislabeled 35, so it looks like one of the episodes is missing, but it isn't. So fortunately, I think we've got most of the snafus done. But to have this many episodes and have those, couple things be the only things that are wrong, I'm okay with that. All right, so I'm going to start out with a little bit of white. What I'm going for is a really kind of a light gray. And it's kind of like the base color for the main reflection of this headlight. So I'm going to start with just one drop of black, see what we get. Because I do want to kind of light. I want to be able to darken it as we go. It's probably too light. There we go. It's still too light. One more. No, two more. I'm going to go for it because I think, by the way, this is mixing out. It's probably going to need two. Yeah, that's perfect. So it's just kind of a really light gray mixed up from opaque black and opaque white. All right. And these, all these are reduced. So what you would normally do if you don't pre-mix your black and white like I do, you would add... what I would do is I would first put the reducer in the cup, and then I would add a little bit of just straight up white, and then using the palette, I would just use a tiny bit of black. If you use drops of paint on this scale, you'd get a lot of paint. So I don't need a whole bunch of it. Okay. Or Wes putting on the gloves of protection. Okay, so really what I'm looking at is the outside edge here. This is white. I don't want white. I want gray. There we go. White was the first one to go in, so it kind of ended up being at the bottom of the cup, so it was the first thing to come out. I really didn't mix the paint really well enough. So now that I've got it mixed up and the gray is coming through, I can start working with that. There's a lot going on in the lens of this headlight. It is really beautiful. So I'm just going to kind of hit the darker areas with this light gray. I'm really concerned with the outside edge to start. You can see how it's kind of spider webbing a little bit. It's not really going on really super clean, but because I have to do all the work on the outside of the frame here of the headlight, that's okay. I don't mind. Now I could mask it off. I could use a template or a shield or photocopy cutout, but for just kind of blocking this stuff in and knowing how much work I'm going to kind of do on this as we go, this is fine. It saves a little bit of time in me doing all that masking and cutting and whatever, when really all I want to do is just kind of get some paint on it. And since this is the lightest gray, I can use this in almost all the areas that have any kind of value to them. A lot of this is pure white, especially on the bottom side of this. So I'll be hitting that with white as we go too. But for now, it's just mostly kind of worrying about the outside edge, because I do want to kind of get the outside done as well. the contrast just texturally and overall between this really shiny faceted headlight and the rusty rest of the bike is just is one of the best parts about this painting, or this image really. Not really about the painting, but hopefully it'll be about the painting, but certainly about the image. It's how clean that headlight is and how messed up the rest of the bike is in a way. Used and worn. Not really messed up. And I'm just going by what the HD stencil has given me. So, and I'm bouncing back and forth. You can just see the corner of the tablet here. So I have the headlight zoomed in on the tablet so I can really see what's going on with that. There's a lot of great colors in here too. There's yellow ochre and blues and a little bit of pink. Just all kinds of stuff going on in that. And just like the other, the textures from the HD stencil, I just kind of want to, I'm using it as the guide here. I don't want to lose it entirely, and if I do cover the entire HD stencil, I want to make sure it's covered with paint, you know what I mean? So that I can still see what the HD stencil had to say, but now it's replaced with paint, and that's really the goal. So all these great little division lines between the lenses to help it, be brighter than it really should be. I want to make sure I keep as many of those as possible so I don't have to try to make them up later, And again, this is a light gray, so I can put this everywhere on here. It's the lightest gray that appears in the headlight. So I can put it anywhere because the darker stuff is going to cover it, and the white eventually is going to, I'll end up popping the white out anyway. Sorry for my sniffles. It is springtime here in Ohio, and this spring has been really chilly. So we had a couple days where it was really, really nice. Today is actually beautiful, but it's still, the art dungeon is usually about 10 degrees behind whatever is going on outside. So even though it's a nice day today, it's still pretty chilly down here. And it's great, for as tight as this HD stencil really allows you to be, so nice to be able to just sit here and freehand this. And then again, it's a back and forth for me to not only keep myself really engaged in the painting, but just to kind of mix things up for me. If I do everything with, in one way, like the paintbrush and the stencil or paintbrush, or even just if I do all of it freehand, it gets a little bit monotonous for me, and especially on a painting that's like this where it's really a long haul type of thing, there's hours and hours in it. It's good for me to kind of break things up. So I could do this, like I said, I could do this by using a mask or stencils or whatever, but to be able to just sit and kind of pick at it freehand is nice. It really breaks up this painting, makes it a little bit more, like I said, engaging. I don't really get too bored. Sometimes I do with paintings, like if it's one area that's really like the same thing over and over again, like it's a texture, like say it's like trees or something, where it's really the same kind of texture, only different values or colors or things like that. And I have to do a lot of that. That can kind of wear on me. But most of the times there's enough going on in a painting that you're not on one area for too long or one type. And even if I am, I can always stop that and go on to another part of it and just kind of mess around until I back into it, or even take a break from the painting entirely. You guys know how long this painting has been going on for, so there's always been other stuff on the bench other than this painting, so it's nice. You get to kind of bounce around. Again, this is the Micron C. I could be using the B here because these things are so, these little areas are so tiny. But the major component of this color is white, and the Micron B, this brush barely likes the white. The Micron B definitely does not like white. You can get it to work, but this brush processes white better than the B, and the HPC or the CS will process white even better than this brush. So kind of choose your battles, I guess. All right, that's really good, and that's all I need for that. Because again, from here it's a lot of darks and highlights and things like that. So actually, I'll get a little bit more up on here just to kind of even it out. But that's it. So now I can work on this outside headlight, the bezel and then the housing, and not worry about that blue overspray that's going on right there. If this was done, then I'd have to fix that, but now I don't. I'm just going to do it once and that'll be it. So let me clean this out and we'll move right along. So I think the next, what do I want to do here? I've got the yellow in. I feel good about that. I think I'm going to add a little bit of white so that will be done as well. And what I'm looking at is that yellow primer or paint or whatever that is on that headlight. Those yellow areas, they have a lot of white highlights in them, so I want to kind of get those first, I think. Again, for the same reason. So I don't have to put those on top of a darker color. And if I need any more of the yellow, I'll get some of that in there too. But I don't think I do. I think it's mostly just the white details that need to go in here. Like along the edge here where I didn't do, that's all really dark. So, and again, it's that sort of mix between the really dark umbers and blacks and things like that. This highlight mainly comes across that sharpest edge. I can always pull these back out later if they get covered, but this will do it. There are some along here. There's another little ridge that goes along the whole way, but I'm more concerned just about this yellow area first. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is primer. So it's like all the paint is gone except for little bits of primer here and there. There we go. That looks good. All right. Next up is the brown. So there's a lot going on in this as well. Just like the handlebar, there's texture in here that can go either way. Meaning I could use an airbrush or a paintbrush. I'm going to use a paintbrush because it's so tight. So what I need to do is I need to put out some burnt umber onto the palette, and I already have black, so I'm good there. Put this where you can see it. You guys can only see about half the palette. There's an upper section here that has, the same thing, but I have it set up so it's kind of just local to that. Oops, got white in the brush there. So I'm looking for is just kind of like a really dirty umber color, really dark umber color. Like that. So this headlight bezel is what we're looking at right now. Make sure we don't have too much paint on this. And we don't want errant hairs. There we go. Again, because this texture is so sharp, I'm going to do this with the paintbrush just to make life easy. I mean, again, trying to pull like that line off with the airbrush and have it that tight is inordinately difficult, and it's unnecessarily difficult. You could get really close to that. You'd have to go over it a few times and you'd have to hit it exactly on the mark. And then at the end of the day, no one would care other than other airbrush artists. So just roll with the paintbrush. This needs to be a little bit darker than what I have, which is fine. It's fine. Just again, it makes it more textural if I have, you know, a number of different colors going on in here. Like if I hit it and it's not dark enough and I then go over it with a darker color, now you have two layers of paint kind of playing on there, and that's really good. It just makes it more interesting. And again, the saving grace of this whole bike is that it's so like beaten and banged up that it doesn't have to be perfect. It's, in fact, it's better if it's not perfect. Like if that, you know, that line, you know, that circle isn't, I mean, it needs to be close because it's not like this got in an accident or anything. But still, it's, you know, really beat up. So now the bottom side of this too, I'm more concerned with the edge here where the paint is showing than this kind of back side of it, because this is going to get airbrushed as well, and it's going to get airbrushed so it can smooth out. But I can do the same thing. I can set the edge with the paintbrush, and then I can airbrush inside of it, and that'll even it all out, while still giving me this nice, you know, decayed type of edge here, and still having a really, really tight edge in the back side here. Again, for something like this, I'd have to cut this out if I'd want a really clean line with the mask, you know, either paper, stencil, or whatever. But paintbrush does a great job at it. And then this area in here, I can fill in with the airbrush. The airbrush can certainly do something like that, detail like that. This also fades into like a bluish, that steel blue color. So got to keep that in mind as I'm kind of rolling up on the top side of this. Beauteous. Start on the other side. There is a, like this lightens up as the light hits it a little bit more, and there's a little bit more rust going on there. But take that as we go. So you see how dark and sharp this is? Again, if I did all this first and then I went in with the airbrush, I would have to mask this off somehow, either with a handheld shield or a template or adhesive mask or something. If I didn't, then that overspray would definitely get on this really deep, rich brown, and you'd see it. It would turn blue. So by kind of knocking that out first, makes it much easier to deal with after the fact. I basically only have to do this once. But maybe a little bit of cleanup. It's almost new brush time again. So these Winsor Newtons, I use them, you guys have seen it, I use them a lot. This one is actually an older one, I can tell because the label's worn off. Usually they have gold lettering on them, so when they're worn off like this, I know they're old. They last me a while. Actually, this is a 0, so you can see the difference in the length of tips. So this is a 0, this is a 00, which I've been using a lot. I'm actually surprised that I don't know, I just grabbed this one. Been doing a lot with the 00s lately. So it's kind of neat that I'm back to my 0 brushes. So anyway, it's almost new brush time. I can tell because this one holds a point, but it doesn't hold a super good point, and it's not anything with the brush, it's just the way that I abuse them. These brushes are generally, well, they're watercolor brushes, and they're not intended to be used with, or they weren't built to be used with acrylic-based paints. You certainly can, but usually acrylic brushes are more of the synthetic style brushes, where these are sable brushes. And but I just love the point on them. I love how resilient they are. They're just great. So the trade-off is, if you have a Series 7 brush and you're a watercolorist, you can own that brush for a very, 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 very long time. They will last for, I have watercolor brushes that are just have been used for watercolor and nothing else, and they are old. But for acrylic paints, they tend to kind of get beat up a little bit, and I'm okay with that. It's like a cost of doing business type of thing. I really love the performance, and I'm willing to kind of abuse the brushes to get that. So generally I can get about a year out of a brush of like peak performance. And then like this one, I mean, this one's a much older brush, but I can still use it. It just doesn't have that laser sharp point that a brand new brush will have. So I know that it's almost new brush time, because one, I usually have a couple on hand, brand new ones, and I do not. And this one's starting to get to the point where it just doesn't really want to hold the same kind of point. So that means new brush time. Okay, so as it gets closer to this area here, again, there's a lot of that blue going on there. So I don't want to put too much time and effort into doing details that are just going to get covered. But that is good. It seems to be more yellow here than I have, which I want to grab. And there's a tighter line there too. And again, as I'm kind of picking at this, I just want to thank you all again. It's neat that we're so far into this, and it just picks up speed. You know, I get new people who kind of jump in halfway and then go and watch all the other episodes. So it means a lot to me that, you know, people are enjoying it. All right, so this line needs to be really, really thin, thinner than this brush can do. So I'm going to paint it as thin as it will go, and then adjust it after. Guys, there we go. Let's get in there so you can see it. So this line will then kind of curve into the rest of the bezel like that. Okay, so to adjust this line, to get it thinner, I don't think I can get any closer. Well, you should be able to get the idea. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump out to the white and black and make that same gray that I just made up for the airbrush. That really light gray. And then what I can do is I can take that color and I can carve the back of this out. So now I can make this line much thinner than I could originally painted it with the paintbrush. I mean, yeah, with the paintbrush. So I just kind of back into that line and make it as thin as I need to make it. Like that. And that works beautifully. Okay. There's a little bit more yellow in there than I have, so I'm going to drop that in too. So I got to get some yellow ochre. Oh, whoa, I didn't shake it up. What could go wrong? Well, I have a lot of yellow ochre on there now. And it's super watery because it wasn't shaken up, but it'll still be okay. There we go. Kind of that bright yellow. There we go. And drop that back in here. In fact, I can use this wherever that yellow needs to be now, because in some spots, like especially down here on the bottom, for some reason it got kind of lost. Maybe I don't even think I finished it really, but I can always pull it back out now. Same thing up here too. This area on the side is a little bit washed out, grayed out. There's not a lot of yellow there, so we'll get that in there too. same thing here. Yeah, this whole area. So I think what happened was I was just blocking it in with the airbrush and then just kind of went a little bit too far with it and covered up where all the yellows should be. Not a big deal. There are some yellow details like chipped paint here as well, but they come in at the very end because I have to put in that blue first. Yep, up here too. Down on here too. So as long as I keep this fairly thick, you know, on the surface, it'll stay the color it's supposed to. If this goes on very thin, it'll take on kind of a greenish cast, which is, again, not a big deal. What would have to happen there is I would wait till it dried, and then I would go in and hit it again, or, you know, 2 or 3 times really, to get it to really become the color that it's supposed to be. Get rid of that green cast. But that is working. Okay. That's blue going on there. I think I want to add a little bit more of the umber down to here. Should get that blue cast in here now before I go too much farther. Maybe we'll do that. Yeah, that's what we'll do. Okay, so the blue cast, it's, again, I think I talked about it when we were at one point. It's a lot like what's going on here. You see that kind of raw steel poking through the, you know, the areas of oxidation. So that same thing is going on up in here. This highlight right here has like kind of a bluish cast to it. So I think I should, oh no, I cleaned that out. What a good doobie I am. Unfortunately, that gray would have been perfect for this. The gray I used for the headlight. I should have just tagged that as well, but it's okay. I can just mix something similar, except this time, since I have the option, I'm going to add a little bit of blue to it as well. I don't have to add a lot of blue to it because it's going on to that warm brown, and as soon as I hit it with the white, it's going to have kind of a blue cast to it anyway. But to ensure that, I can add a little bit of blue to it. So we'll just put a couple drops of white in here. I know all of a sudden my chair decides to squeak. So the old drafting chair I have on with the other bench has been named by my daughter. She named it a while ago when she was little, and they call it the squeaky chair. So now this new office chair here, oh, that's violet. That's actually going to be okay. This new kind of office chair that I have for the Visionaire station here also now squeaks. I think it's squeaking because it feels like it needs to. All right, so there you go. So there's like white with a little bit of violet in it. Get that going. There we go. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm just kind of adding the highlight that's in here, the overall highlight. First, we'll see how hard this comes out. I may have to reduce this a little bit to make it not as bold. I do. I just want a little bit more control over this. So right now it's fairly thick because it's mostly white. So I'm just going to add some of the reducer and 40-50, the 1-to-10 mix to it. This will thin it out a little bit and also make it a little bit more transparent, which I need both of those things. Okay. Already it's looking good. Already it's heading in the right direction. So mix that up a little bit. And you can see why the gray would have done the job here. The one I had in the brush before. It was a little bit bluer, but than this violet, which I actually really like. I'm glad there was a happy mistake right there, grabbing the violet instead of the blue. And that's it. That's all I need to do. So that sets up that same bluish cast that's on the front of the fender there too. All right. So that is where I'm going to leave it. We're going to pick up where we leave. I could talk too. Pick up where I leave. All right, stop. We're going to pick up where we left off next week with the details on that bezel. And then as soon as I get the bezel done and the housing, I'm going to just knock out the whole headlight. And then believe it or not, this painting now is over half done. So it's taken You know, it's taken a while, but this painting will definitely top out around 35 to 40 hours when it's done. But it is definitely coming together. I'm excited about it. So thank you for joining me for Open Studio. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and click the notification button there too, so you get all the notifications of all the fun stuff that's going on here on the channel. So thanks a lot, and for Steve Leahy in Open Studio, I will catch you next time. Thanks a lot.